Imagine stepping up to the starting line of a marathon, right? You look at the runner next to you and you realize their entire strategy for winning the gold medal is to actively try to come in last.
Right, which sounds completely insane.
Exactly. I mean, it sounds almost delusional, but what if I told you that in the modern world, like in your cutthroat corporate grind, in your social circles, just in your daily life, that exact strategy is actually the ultimate cheat code?
It really is. I mean, it's the ultimate subversion of, well, everything we are taught about success. Because we live in an era where the prevailing wisdom is all about, aggressive visibility.
Oh, absolutely. You have to dominate the room. You have to manage your Slack status so everyone knows you're online.
You have a little green dot.
Yes, you have to run the whole LinkedIn humble brag marathon and just constantly hustle for credit. If you aren't sprinting, the assumption is basically that you are failing. But today, we are taking a deep dive into a philosophy that throws that entire playbook out the window. We're looking at an ancient blueprint for success that feels entirely upside down, but it might actually be the cure to our modern burnout.
Yeah, we are diving into Chapter 7 of the Tao Te Ching, and specifically, we're exploring the nuances of the incredibly popular translation by Stephen Mitchell,
Right.
which is fascinating because he frames this ancient text not just as a piece of history, but as a living, breathing, psychological toolkit.
So the mission for today's deep dive is to sort of figure out the mechanics of this ultimate paradox. Like, how does putting yourself last actually propel you to the front?
Which is the big question.
Right. And more importantly, how can you, listening to this right now, apply this to your own life without becoming, a total doormat?
Yeah, that's crucial.
But to start, I think we have to look at where this idea even comes from. Because Lao Tzu didn't just sit down and write a corporate management book. He started by, well, looking up at the sky.
He did. He starts with the ultimate macro view.
Yeah.
So the foundational concept in this chapter is a Chinese term, Tiandi.
Tiandi. Okay.
Yeah, which literally translates to heaven and earth. So the universe itself. And the observation the text makes is about longevity. Like, why is the universe infinite? Why is it endured for billions of years?
Right.
And the answer he provides is that the universe doesn't live for itself. It simply exists.
That is such a striking image. I mean, the universe doesn't wake up in a panic with a massive to-do list.
No, it doesn't.
The sun doesn't rise hoping it gets, good metrics for shining today. It doesn't have an ego to feed. But let's break down the actual mechanism here, because that's a really nice poetic thought. But what does it literally mean for us?
Right, practically speaking.
Yeah, how does having an ego actually wear us out?
Well, think about it in terms of cognitive load, right, and energy consumption. For a human being, maintaining an ego requires an astonishing amount of calories and mental bandwidth.
Oh, for sure.
You are constantly calculating, how am I being perceived right now? Did I sound smart in that meeting? Is my coworker getting more praise than me?
How can I subtly remind everyone of my contribution?
Exactly. And all of that internal monitoring creates massive psychological friction.
It's like having 20 background apps running on your phone, just draining the battery while you're just trying to make a simple phone call.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it.
Mm.
And the universe bypasses all of that friction. Because it has no personal agenda, no self-interest, it isn't constantly consuming its own energy just to validate its existence.
It just functions smoothly.
Right. Now, what's really fascinating about this concept is how it has been translated over the centuries, because that dramatically changes how you and I interact with the text today.
I really want to dig into this translation debate, because looking at the traditional text versus what Stephen Mitchell did is wild.
It's quite a leap.
Yeah. If you go back and read scholars from the 19th or early 20th century like James Legge, or even later traditionalists like Alan Shen, they keep this chapter hyper-focused on that grand cosmological scale. They translate it almost academically.
They do. A literal translation reads very much like an observation of physics and nature. Heaven is long enduring and earth continues long.
Which is beautiful, but it's very distant.
Exactly. If you are reading that on your morning commute, you might appreciate the poetry of it, but it doesn't give you a blueprint for how to handle your 10 a.m. performance review.
Right. Which is where Stephen Mitchell comes in with a much more liberal interpretive approach. He takes this massive observation about space and time and pulls it all the way down into the human mind.
He uses psychological.
Yeah, he introduces the concept of the master to embody this universal flow. And he does something else really interesting with the language here, right?
He does, yeah. Mitchell actively chooses to use the pronoun she when referring to the master in this chapter.
Oh.
And it's a deliberate choice. He does it to balance out the heavily male-dominated language of historical texts, but it also, I think, strips away the stereotypical imagery of, a bearded ancient sage sitting on a mountain.
It grounds it.
Yeah, it brings the concept into the present, modernizing it entirely.
So Mitchell's translation reads, and I have it here, it says, "The master stays behind. That is why she is ahead. She is detached from all things. That is why she is one with them. Because she has let go of herself, she is perfectly fulfilled."
That's powerful stuff.
It is. But I read that, and part of me wonders, is Mitchell, cheating the original text by making it so psychological? Or is translating a cosmic event into human behavior exactly what's required for this philosophy to actually survive?
I would argue it's what makes the text immortal, honestly.
Yes.
I mean, the entire point of the Tao Te Ching is finding the way, the natural order of things.
Right.
If you can't map that natural order onto human psychology, well, it's just astronomy. By filtering Tiandi through the figure of the master, Mitchell gives you an archetype. He's essentially saying, here is what a human being looks like when they operate with the frictionless energy of the universe.
Okay, so let's look at the mechanics of this archetype. What is the master actually doing to stay ahead while staying behind? Because this brings us to a term that I've always found deeply confusing.
Oh, wu wei.
Yes, wu wei, which roughly translates to effortless action. But to me, that sounds like a complete oxymoron.
It really does at first glance.
Yeah, how can action be effortless if you are, say, trying to lead a team through a crisis?
Well, it sounds contradictory because we are so conditioned to equate effort with tension.
Oh, interesting.
Right. We think that if our muscles aren't strained or our anxiety isn't spiking, we just aren't trying hard enough. But Wu Wei isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing exactly what is required without forcing it. It's about taking action that is perfectly aligned with the situation, free from the heavy, clumsy interference of your own ego.
Okay, can you give me an example of what that heavy interference of the ego looks like, maybe in a leadership role?
Sure. Think about a manager who desperately needs you to know they are the boss.
Oh, we all know one.
Right. They micromanage, they interrupt. They force their own solutions even when a subordinate has a way better idea, simply because their ego cannot handle not being the savior in the room.
Yeah.
And what happens? They create immense friction. Their team resents them, they hide information from them, and they actively resist their influence.
We've all worked for that person. You immediately put your guard up.
Yeah.
And you spend half your energy just managing their fragile ego instead of doing the actual work.
Exactly. But then consider Mitchell's line. The master stays behind. That is why she's ahead. The leader, practicing Wu Wei, doesn't push to be the center of attention. They don't force their authority. And the paradox here is, because they aren't trying to manipulate or dominate the room naturally turns to them. Trust flourishes in the absolute absence of ego.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to see if I'm really grasping the practical application of this.
Go for it.
Imagine a highly tense, chaotic group meeting. There's a massive crisis and everyone is panicking. Now, the standard ego-first response is to jump in immediately, talk over people, and aggressively pitch a solution so you look like the smartest person in the room.
And in doing so, you really only add to the chaos. You escalate the anxiety.
Right. But the person practicing Wu Wei, the one staying behind, they literally sit back, they listen, they let everyone else frantically throw their puzzle pieces onto the table.
Yes.
They don't rush to interject because they aren't worried about claiming the spotlight.
And what happens while they're listening?
They're absorbing everything. They're getting the full picture. So by the time the room exhausts its panicked energy, this person finally speaks up. And their contribution is the most informed, the most synthesized, and just the most valuable.
Exactly.
They literally end up ahead. They become the de facto leader of the solution precisely because they chose to stay behind and let the chaos play out.
That is a brilliant modern application of Wu Wei. You didn't burn any calories fighting for dominance. You let the natural momentum of the room do the work, and you stepped in right at the point of maximum leverage.
Wow.
And this ties directly into the second crucial behavior Mitchell highlights, which is detachment. The text says, she is detached from all things. That is why she is one with them.
Let's unpack detachment, because I feel like that word carries a ton of baggage. When I hear detached, I instantly think of apathy.
Sure.
I think of a moody teenager shrugging their shoulders, or a coworker who just clocks in and genuinely does not care if the project goes up in flames.
That is a very common misconception. But apathy is a lack of care for the action itself. Taoist detachment is entirely different.
Okay, how so?
It is an intense focus on the action, but a complete letting go of the outcome. Or, more specifically, it's a detachment from the personal validation attached to that outcome.
So it's separating the work from the applause.
Exactly. Let's say you write a brilliant proposal. If you are attached, your internal peace depends on your boss praising it, your team marveling at it, and a promotion resulting from it.
Right, you need that feedback loop.
Yes, and if any of those fail to happen, you are devastated. You suffer. But if you are detached, you write the brilliant proposal simply because doing excellent work is its own reward. The moment it leaves your hands, you release it. If it's praised, wonderful. If it's ignored, you remain entirely unaffected. You are essentially bulletproof.
It's a complete rewiring of how we seek fulfillment. And honestly, this feels like a direct attack on the entire modern self-help industry.
Oh, absolutely it is.
Almost everything we are sold today is about finding yourself. You have to discover your personal brand, find your voice, uncover your unique truth. The self is treated as the ultimate prize we have to dig up and polish.
And the Tao Te Ching suggests the exact opposite. Chapter 7 posits that the self is actually the barrier. It is a heavy, fragile, exhausting backpack you are lugging around everywhere you go.
That's such a good way to describe it.
Yeah, and Mitchell's translation says, because she has let go of herself, she is perfectly fulfilled. When you let go of the relentless need to protect your status or defend your legacy or curate your image, you stop feeling empty.
You no longer require constant validation from the outside world to prop you up.
Exactly.
It's wild because it makes so much logical sense, but it is deeply countercultural. And I think it's one thing to philosophize about staying behind or detaching from outcomes in the abstract.
Right.
But if you're listening to this right now, how do you actually practice a Tao-first mindset on a random Tuesday morning? Like, how do we apply this to the digital noise we live in?
Well, let's start right there with our digital lives. Social media, networking apps, team messaging platforms. These are essentially massive friction generators. They're basically slot machines for the ego.
Oh, entirely. You post a photo or even just a thought on a professional network, and the immediate instinct is to monitor the reaction.
Of course it is.
You check back 5 minutes later, any likes, any comments. We literally tie our central nervous system to a fluctuating, completely unpredictable external metric.
And the Chapter 7 application here is radical detachment at the point of action. When you decide to share something, whether it's an insight, a piece of art, or advice, you do it because it is intrinsically true or helpful.
Okay.
The practice is that the very second you hit send, you abandon it. You mentally walk away.
Wait, you don't delete the app, you just delete the emotional investment in the analytics.
Exactly. Whether that post gets 10 likes or 10,000, your internal state remains pristine. You are fulfilled before a single person even sees it.
That is so freeing.
It is. You are modeling heaven and earth. You are producing what is natural for you to produce without requiring the universe to send you a good job notification.
That actually leads to another huge area of friction: how we talk to each other. Because think about your daily conversations. How often, if we're being brutally honest, are we just waiting for the other person to pause so we can steer the topic back to ourselves?
Neurologically, it's very difficult not to. I mean, our brains are constantly looking for ways to relate information back to our own experiences, to validate our existence. We treat conversations as transactions.
So the application here is something called the no agenda interaction. The practice is to enter a conversation and become a hollow vessel.
I love that term.
Right, you actively suppress the urge to interject your own story. You have absolutely no goal other than to be entirely present for the reality the other person is sharing.
And what happens when you do that is incredibly powerful, because almost no one in modern society truly listens. So when you offer someone a hollow vessel, they feel profoundly seen. And the irony is that by completely removing your ego from the interaction, by not trying to impress them with your own anecdotes, you build an infinitely deeper level of trust and connection. You win the relationship by not trying to dominate the dialogue.
Let's look at one more practical application, and this is about how we approach our long-term goals. We are so conditioned to sprint. If you want to write a book, launch a business, or get in shape, the cultural message is always to push through the pain, sacrifice sleep, and just relentlessly chase the deadline.
Which is the primary recipe for burnout. When you operate that way, you are consuming your present energy to reach a theoretical future state.
Yeah.
You are basically cannibalizing yourself.
So what does heaven and earth persistence look like then?
It looks like moving with the unforced rhythm of the seasons. Nature doesn't rush, yet everything gets accomplished. Instead of obsessing over the finish line like, I must lose 10 pounds by summer, or I must finish this manuscript by Friday, you detach from the deadline and focus entirely on the microscopic process. You focus on taking the daily walk. You focus on writing the single daily sentence.
You stop burning fuel on the anxiety of the future, which means you suddenly have an eternal supply of energy for the present moment.
Precisely.
If you're just writing one sentence, there's no friction. It's effortless action. It's wu-wei.
And because there is no friction, you can sustain that action indefinitely. That is how the universe endures.
Okay, I am entirely on board with the theory, but I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of anyone listening who works in a highly competitive environment.
Fair enough.
If you actually do this, if you give away all the credit, if you listen without speaking up to defend your ideas, if you completely ignore the metrics of success, don't you just become a massive doormat? Won't a toxic corporate culture just eat a person like that alive?
That is the most important pushback to this philosophy, and it requires a very precise distinction. The text is clear. Letting go of your ego does not equate to becoming a doormat.
Okay, how so?
We have to understand what a doormat actually is psychologically.
Yeah.
A doormat is someone who is still desperately playing the ego game, but they are losing.
Wait, explain that. How is a doormat playing the ego game?
A doormat is harboring resentment. They are biting their tongue, but internally screaming for recognition. They feel victimized.
Ah, I see.
They are deeply attached to the outcome. They are just paralyzed by fear or a lack of power. They are full of friction. It's just internalized.
Wow. Okay, so they still want the validation. They just aren't getting it, which is why it hurts so much.
Exactly. The master, on the other hand, isn't playing a weak hand in the ego game.
Ah.
The master has stepped off the board entirely.
Oh, that's a great distinction.
When you genuinely detach from the need for credit, you don't feel victimized when someone else takes it. You simply don't care. And because you harbor no resentment, you project an aura of unshakable peace.
So what does that look like practically in an office? If you aren't fighting for your slice of the pie, do people just forget you exist?
Actually, the opposite happens.
Mm-hmm.
You become the rarest, most valuable commodity in any organization.
Mm-hmm.
A competent person who isn't a threat to anyone else's ego.
Oh, wow.
Because you aren't hoarding credit or playing political games, everyone wants you on their team. You become the foundation that everyone else relies on.
A doormat gets stepped on and eventually wears out. But you're saying a person practicing this philosophy becomes the ground itself. You support everything, but you can't be diminished because you aren't asking anyone to hold you up.
It is a position of ultimate, quiet, unassailable strength. You cannot be knocked off your pedestal if you refuse to stand on one.
That is such a vital distinction. It completely reframes the idea of selflessness from a position of weakness to a position of invulnerability. So let's zoom out and bring this all together for everyone listening right now. We've traveled from the vastness of the cosmos right down to the notifications on your phone.
We have. We started with the observation of Tiandi, how heaven and earth endure because they lack a self-serving agenda. They don't burn energy on ego.
Right.
We explored Stephen Mitchell's translation, which takes that cosmic reality and maps it onto human behavior through the archetype of the master.
And we tackled the counterintuitive power of wu-wei, how stepping back and not forcing your authority actually makes you the person everyone looks to for leadership. We clarified that true detachment isn't about not caring about your work. It's about bulletproofing yourself by letting go of the need for external validation.
Yeah, and we looked at the tangible ways to apply this today, like releasing your digital posts to the wind without checking the metrics, offering people the gift of a no-agenda conversation, and replacing the exhausting sprint of modern goal setting with the unforced, enduring persistence of the seasons.
So, as you go about the rest of your day, I want you to think about the biggest point of friction in your life right now. Maybe it's a conflict with a manager at work. Maybe it's a recurring argument with a partner. Or maybe it's just your own internal anxiety about where your career is heading.
We have one.
Yeah. Ask yourself, how much of that exhaustion is being generated by your ego trying to control an outcome? What would happen if, just for today, you decided to stay behind? What if you focused solely on the integrity of your actions and completely abandoned your need for the applause?
It's a profound diagnostic tool. Once you identify the ego friction, you have the power to simply stop participating in it.
We learned today that Chapter 7 of the Tao Te Ching is built on this beautiful, radical paradox. The more you give up your need to win, the more you actually gain. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. It's a bit of a philosophical trap, but it's fascinating.
Oh, the ultimate Taoist riddle.
Exactly. We've established that true fulfillment and effortless action require you to completely let go of your desire for them. But if you walk away from this deep dive and you actively start trying to practice detachment, trying to be a hollow vessel, trying to put yourself last, isn't the very act of trying defeating the purpose?
That is the edge of the cliff the text brings you to.
Are you just creating a new ego around being the most enlightened person in the room? Can you ever truly try not to try? It is something that will definitely mess with your head, but in the most expansive, wonderful way possible.
Beautifully put.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the wisdom of Lao Tzu. The next time you feel the pressure to swim like a shark and hustle for that spotlight, I hope you remember the quiet, unshakable power of the ground beneath your feet. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.